Welcome to the webinar, and I'm going to be turning this over to Mary Poplin, who is our product specialist on the West Coast, and she's going to be walking you through Mocha and Mocha Pro. We have a lot of users all around the world, and I think that the webinars are a great time for them to see how an experienced Mocha user approaches certain problems. So, Mary, take it away.
All right. Well, hi guys. I am Mary Poplin. I'm Imagineer Systems LA-based product specialist. So if you're in the LA area and you need help, I'm happy to help you. But I also service the entire West Coast and pretty much anyone who bugs me about questions. So if you have anything you want to know, I'm happy to answer them. So welcome to our Beauty Work in Mocha V3 webinar. What we're going to do is we're going to go over planar tracking for beauty work. We're going to go over some blemish removals, and if you guys have seen that before, we're just going to go through that, not quickly, but we're going to go through it thoroughly, okay? Linear illumination modeling is another thing we're going to be covering, just basically talking about how that works and the problems to avoid there, but also how to use it to save yourself time. We're also going to be going over how to smooth over skin wrinkles and bags on people's faces and things like that, but selectively. We're also going to be going over using the insert tool with Gridwarp, and that's for digital makeup, adding things. In this case, we're going to be adding gruesome digital makeup, so it's not beauty work so much as it's ugly work, but it'll really increase your workflow. And we're going to be using the Gridwarp to sort of create some fake geometry. And then we're going to be showing how to blend clean plates with original plates. Now, the reasons that you would want to use Mocha for beauty work is because you can easily track skin without tracking markers. We'll be going over that. We'll be tracking skin both with and without tracking markers. Tracking markers really don't make a difference for Mocha. We're also going to talk about matching lighting changes over time, which is where that illumination modeling comes in. We're going to be talking about how one clean plate can fix your whole shot, or when to use multiple clean plates, and I have an example of that I'm going to show you. We're going to talk about what you do when Mocha can't see behind an object, and for most Mocha projects, you won't be where you use beauty work, you won't be able to see behind the objects because they'll actually be on someone's face or something like that. So we'll show you how to use these clean paints, and basically we're just going to show you how you can cut your paint time in half, and then we will answer questions. So let me jump over here to After Effects, and we will start our demo. Now I'm going to show you guys how to import stuff from scratch. Using the animation window and tracking in Mocha. But Mocha import is something you guys might want to look into. It's by Matthias Moll. He did a wonderful webinar last month where he goes over in depth how to use that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to import a file and start our webinar. So let's go over here to my Beauty Work folder. And what we will do is we will load up our first file. Now in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to take this lovely clip of Edward Norton, and we are going to make him look much younger. Now the purpose of this is we want to be able to selectively get rid of things like bags under his eyes, hard lines around his mouth, and wrinkles in his forehead to sort of make him age backwards, so to speak. And I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see what that looks like. Now, you see he's got some pretty serious bags under here, so how do we fix that? Well, we can actually fix that really simply in Mocha and After Effects by doing a couple of very simple blends. So here's where we're going to start. We're going to go to Animation, okay, right here. Don't be slow. Okay, Animation, and we're going to go to Track in Mocha.
And Mary, you're running After Effects Creative Cloud, correct?
I am running After Effects Creative Cloud.
Okay,
and,
great. So yeah, I just think it, and we'll register later, of course.
Yeah.
And okay, so basically, we just want to point out that the newest version of After Effects Creative Cloud does include Mocha AE. You launch it from within the animation window within After Effects, and you will notice if you're an older Mocha AE user that some of the interface has been updated, and there's some really, really cool new features in the version that comes with After Effects. As well as Mary will point out when she goes into Mocha Pro and other areas.
Absolutely. And so when we go to the animation window and we do the track in Mocha selection, what happens is we have this window pop up. Now this window, a lot of times you're going to be tempted to just hit OK and speed past it, but what you really need to do here is you need to check your frame range and make sure that that is the correct frame range for your shot for your final comp. Also check your frame rate and make sure that's correct, because files don't always read 100% correctly. Okay. We're also going to come over here and we're going to check our pixel aspect ratio and whether or not we are using interlaced footage. So we're going to go ahead and click OK because this is correct. Actually, we're going to call this webinar because I don't want to save over my other file. We're going to hit OK. Okay, and what this will do is this will load our shot into Mocha. Now it's very simple from here how we track our shot. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take my X-splines. Now I like using X-splines. You can use Beziers. They're right here if you want them, but I like using X-splines, and the reason I like using them is because they're pretty simple. So if I want to track this area on Edward Norton's head here, okay, all I do is I draw my X-splines right around these shapes. Now I'm going to actually avoid his eyebrows a little bit, and I'm going to sort of bring this point down the center of his forehead. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I'm trying to encompass all these wrinkles, not for any tracking reason. And when I say that Mocha doesn't need tracking markers to track, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. I can just draw a shape and leave it stuck how I would like it to be, and I don't have to worry about the details of that shape. It'll hang on because it's tracking texture. Okay? Now, we are going to lighten up this area under his eyes as well, and sort of fix a lot of this darkening by also drawing some shapes under here. Now you'll notice one of the things I'm doing is I'm thinking about how my final shape is going to look, and you'll notice that I'm actually avoiding this hard highlight over here. I really want to stress that a solid grounding in art theory, so to speak, and painting theory is going to help you when you're doing beauty work. You don't want to do things like blow away hard highlights and hard shadows, because that is what gives realistic detail to the shot. Okay? Actually, so I've drawn this one shape under his eye. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Add to Xspline tool, and I'm going to add this other shape under his eye here. I want these on the same shape because I want to sort of judge the skew of them from this side of his face to this side of his face.
So Mary, that layer is going to be tracking both of those areas together.
It will be. It will be tracking both of those areas together, and then we're going to track his forehead as well as its own layer. So we're tracking forehead as one layer, under eyes as another layer, and then I'm going to add another shape here. We're going to track these hard lines around his mouth. Okay? Now, these are not like 100% necessary, but I like doing them because they really sell the rest of what I'm fixing under the shot. And you'll notice I keep using my Add to Xspline tool. There's no reason to track these separately. You know, and in fact, tracking more data at once will give you a lot more accuracy in Mocha, because the smaller your shape, okay, the less accurate your track is going to be. Think of Mocha as the number of pixels you are tracking increases your accuracy inside of Mocha. So larger shapes or higher minimum pixel used percentage numbers. Now, I know I've talked about this before, but I'm going to go over these tracking values down here and tell you what they mean. Okay, minimum percent of pixels used is basically when you draw a shape in Mocha, what we're doing is we're not looking for hard lines or features, but we are looking for areas of texture. Okay, and in order to judge the difference in this texture over time, we need to select goodly amounts of texture. Okay, so in this case, we're doing all three of these shapes, and we are using 90% of the pixels within these shapes to judge from frame to frame. Okay, we're also going to track translation, scale, rotation, shear, and perspective on the shot. The reason we're going to do that is because this is a handheld camera, and in Mocha, anything handheld is going to have your planes moving in Z space. You want to make sure you capture that value, or the tracking will not be as accurate as you would like. Now, for garbage mats, that's not as important, and these really are garbage mats at the end of the day. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and not really worry about the accuracy so much as we're worried about whether or not they're staying in place. Now, because Mocha's a really good tracker, they're going to be accurate anyway. So we're also going to track large motion. Now, large motion tracking is your basic tracking for anything you do in Mocha. Small motion tracking, don't click this unless you have a shot that is like locked off but the wind is blowing your camera. I mean, that's how small a motion we're talking about. We're talking about very small amounts of shake. Now, manual track is something completely different. That's where you manage the track yourself. But we're going to use large motion to track all of these. So let me just go in here and call this hard mouth lines. Okay, it's important that you name all your layers. I know I say that every time, but it's still true. And we're going to adjust the perspective parameter for every single one of these so that we can track them all at the same time. Now, we're just going to go ahead and let this track through. And if we've done everything correctly, it'll just hang on throughout the shot. Now, you see that Mocha is sticking on pretty well, and, well, it's sticking on very well, actually. And the reason it's doing that is because what it's doing is it's looking for this pattern, okay, over and over and over again from one frame to the next. But it doesn't look from here all the way to here. What it does is it looks from the first frame to the second frame, from the second frame to the third frame, the third frame to the fourth frame. The reason we do that is because that increases our accuracy, okay? And what that does is that means that we can track through blur and stuff like that because we're comparing from one frame to the next, not one reference point throughout the entire shot, okay? Now that we've got this all aligned, what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to turn our mats on, and I'm going to do something that's actually kind of neat that we do in Mocha, which is per point feathering, okay? So I'm going to use my X tool to sort of pan up here, and what we're going to do is we're going to select inner points here with the arrow tool, and we're just going to pull these points around his mouth inside so that we soften the mat of this shape, okay? So when we bring this back over to After Effects, what's going to happen is we are going to have some nice soft edges here, but they're going to be like per point, okay? So for the mouth areas, that's not as important, but for his eyes here, it is, okay? Because we're going to make some very shallow softness around his eyes because we want to leave the hard detail around his eyes, okay? But we want to really blend the sections around his under eye, okay? So we're going to increase our softness of those shapes. Again, here, we're just going to come in here, we're going to soften this and soften this majorly, then blend this really well, okay? So what that will do is that will give us a much better blend when we bring these shapes back into.
And Mary, to find that tool, can you just quickly explain you use the I or the E?
Yes, so you can either use both, and what this will do is move both the inner and outer points. You can use I, which will move inner, and you can use E, which will move either, right? So,
E for edge, right? Yeah, and A for automatic. So it will select.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. All right. E for edge, I for inner, B for both, and then this is your general selection tool. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to soften that whole area there, and we are going to bring these out into After Effects now. Also, by the way, do you see these thumbnail views? These are really good if you're trying to rotoscope on the edges of things, but if they annoy you, turn them off right here. When I was first using Mocha, I didn't know how to turn them off, and it bugged me. So this is how you turn those thumbnail views off. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn our mats off, and we're just going to go over here, and we are going to export our tracking data. Now we're going to actually, I'm sorry, not our tracking data, we're going to export our shape data. And what we're going to do is we're going to do all visible layers because we want all three of these groups, okay, exported. If I wanted to just do the selected layer, I could, and if I wanted to do all of the layers, I could also do that. But we're going to use Mocha shape data for After Effects, and you notice that I only have one export here. Okay, the reason for that is because this is Mocha for After Effects that comes with After Effects, and it doesn't export to anything else other than After Effects, okay? So we're going to copy this to the clipboard, and we are going to go back to After Effects. All right, now, every time we paste data into After Effects, okay, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are on the first frame of our comp. Now, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this layer here, our original footage, and we're going to hide the footage underneath it because I want to show you what this looks like. So if we want to paste this in as a spline, we would go to Edit, Paste Mocha Mask. But do you see how we don't have any of that nice per point feathering that we just did in Mocha? That's because we pasted it in as a spline. If we wanted to do feathering in that, we would have to go into the masks, and we would have to fix that ourselves by hand, but it wouldn't be per point because After Effects doesn't do that right now. So instead what we do is we paste this in as an effect. So we just go to Edit, Paste, and then what Mocha does is Mocha pastes our shapes in as an effect, okay, and we get all that nice per point feathering. This is fine for to use for comps that don't have tons and tons and tons of layers, But if you have tons and tons and tons of layers, you're going to want to not do that because it'll slow your comp down. In this case, it's fine. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to turn our other layer back on underneath it, and we're going to zoom in here for a second. All right, so what we've got here is we've still got these wrinkles here. So what are we going to do about this? We're going to come in over here to Effect. We're actually just going to blur this. We're going to use a box blur. Now, I use box blurs because box blurs are very fast, okay? And when you render them, they're very fast. So we're going to just do, like, I want to say like 15 or something, and we're going to just soften all of this area around under his eyes and on his forehead. And you see that blows away a lot of detail. Well, we don't want to make him look plastic, okay? So what we want to do is we want to come in here to transform. We want to sort of lessen the blend, okay? Now, that's obviously a little too lessened because he still looks a little old here. We can see wrinkles and stuff like that. But let's put this at about like 80 and see what that looks like. So we still have some detail here under his eyes, and you can still see some lines that make it look like he's a human being, but most of the detail has been softened, okay? So this is how we end up with a natural look. Now what we're going to do from here is we're just going to do a very simple match grain. So we're going to go to Noise and Grain inside of After Effects, and we're going to go to Match Grain. Now, Match Grain usually does a pretty good job. I don't actually like to use the preview window. I actually like to use Final just because I like to see what it looks like over the whole screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on Final, and we're just going to go ahead and source our previous layer. And what that will do is that will try to match the grain of the previous layer onto our blur. Okay, so what we end up with, and I'll just show you the difference between the two of these, so we end up with very quickly, okay, a lack of lines in his face while not getting rid of all of the detail in the shot. Okay, and I can play that through so you guys can see what that looks like. Just going to come in here, and we're going to hit play and let that cache so you can see it at speed. Okay, but very, very quickly we end up with an Edward Norton who looks about 10 years younger. He's more Fight Club, less, you know, Bourne. Okay, so if there are no particular questions about, we're going to save questions to last anyway, but unless Ross wants to add anything, I'm going to move on to our second demo.
Yeah, no, we've been covering some of the questions in the text, and I think everything is pretty clear. Some people had some questions about feathering the edges, but I think that was covered pretty well. And you covered that you're pasting into the Mocha shape when you just hit paste, but if you go to edit paste Mocha mask, there's a difference, and you're actually pasting the roto into the mask channel.
Yes.
And the reason that you used the paste, just so I'm understanding, is because you actually wanted to get your feathered edges from Mocha into After Effects.
Yes. Yes. I didn't want to have to refeather everything because I'd already, especially for his eyes here, it's really, I'm just going to zoom in here for a second. It's really important when you deal with detail work around people's eyes that you don't blur these edges, okay? It'll look really weird. And you know, if you use just general feathering in this area, you will not end up with like a nice blend here, but a hard edge here, okay? And just like in painting, I know I mentioned this earlier, but just like in painting, hard edges and soft edges are really, really, really important for making something look realistic, okay? So, and the difference between those. Now let's move on. We're going to cover. We're actually going to cover some removes and how to blend removes with the originals. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm actually going to import I'm actually going to make a new project. All right, and what we're going to do is we are going to import some footage here, and we're going to show you how to do removals on somebody's face. Now, in this case, we've got this this guy here from Grimm. Grimm is a television show that they use Mocha on to do a lot of head replacements, and you can see that on our demo reel. Basically, what we're going to do here is we're going to remove these points in order to show skin underneath so that we can do a blend between a 3D head and this guy's head. So he turns into a rat over time. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go over to actually Mocha Pro, and we're going to show you how to do that. So we're going to do a new project, and we're going to, it's a different project.
So you're going to remove his face markers here.
Yes.
And this is this is an interesting example because a lot of people, they end up using track marks to solve difficult tracking, but then that actually the compositor ends up having to remove a lot of those track marks. So this is sort of a part of the compositing process that a lot of people don't think about.
Sure, exactly. And if you ever see, I don't know if anyone's ever seen some of the screenshots from Pirates of the Caribbean where they were tracking Bill Nye's face. They were going to try to use his original eyes. They ended up rebuilding his eyes in CG, but originally what they were going to try to do is they were going to try to use his eyes, so they left his eyes with just makeup on them, and they put tracking markers all over the rest of his face and around his eyes, and they had to remove all the tracking markers around his eyes to try to blend them. And they had a lot of markers, like not 5 like this. They had like 1 every ½ inch. Now, what we're going to do here is we are going to, in order to do removes inside of Mocha, what we have to do is we have to track the areas that are, quote unquote, behind the objects we're trying to remove. Now, since these dots don't really have anything behind them except for his head, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to track his forehead. And we're also going to need to track his cheek here, okay? And we're going to need to track his other cheek here, okay? And we're going to need to track his nose area. So let's just go ahead and do that. We're just going to come in here and track this nose area. Now, I'm going to try to track as much of a single plane as possible. I don't want to grab a whole lot of the side of his nose. And the same thing with his cheeks. You notice I'm not grabbing the front of his face. I'm grabbing the side of his cheeks. And with his forehead, the same thing. When you track in Mocha, you're tracking planar data. So what you want to do is you want to try to imagine that these guys are broken up into low poly models like you would see in a video game, okay? So the bridge of his nose would be a single plane, and the side of his nose would be a single plane, okay?
Hey, Mary, can you show just the surface and the grids just for a second to emphasize that point even clearer?
I sure can.
Great.
So if you want to see what that looks like, okay, what I mean is this is a plane on the top of his nose. What we're going to do is we're going to align this to the side of his cheek here, okay, just geometry-wise, all right? Same thing for here. I'm going to align this to the side of his cheek. Now, I'm not doing this for Mocha, okay? I'm doing this for me. And I do this because as the artist, what I actually am most concerned with is the accuracy of my track, okay? So if this grid is off or moving weird, okay, what it's going to do is it's going to tell me that my track is off. Now, with stuff like people's skin, you can get away with a little bit of slippage because most people will not notice that when you do removes because we're going to be matching values over time anyway. But with static objects and objects that have hard vertical lines, you want to make sure that your grid is 100% locked to the surface you are replacing. Okay? So we're going to call this forehead track. And we're going to call this left cheek track. Okay, and we are also going to call this right cheek track. And if you think naming layers is tedious, try coming back to a shot with 40 layers 2 weeks later. And that is definitely more tedious. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to zoom out a little bit so that we can see what we're doing. Okay, and we're going to turn this off, turn our our thumbnails off. And what we're going to do is we're going to track perspective again. So we're going to do perspective on this because you can see that he's moving his head up and down, right? So he's moving in Z space. So we're going to get that Z space movement, all right, of his face. And we're going to do that for all of these areas. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to just watch the track as they go through the shot. And in this case, we can do that by selecting all of the layers and turning all of the surface tools on. You won't be able to see all of the grids by doing that, but you will be able to see all of the surface tools. So you can get a pretty good idea of how you are tracking, when you are tracking, and we can track all of these at the same time. Now, I wouldn't recommend tracking more than 3 layers, really, but because this is somebody's face and they're all in the same area, we can get away with tracking 4 at the same time. So be careful tracking shapes at the same time. You can make yourself, get distracted and not have good tracks on all of these. But we're going to go ahead and track all of these forward.
As that's tracking, Mary, I just want to review a couple quick questions. Someone just asked, what's the quick key for the overlays? That's actually something new that we did add that is now found in the Mocha AE that ships with Creative Cloud is some quick keys. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I know under the View menu that you can change. Yeah, you can change the overlays right down there. Yeah, you can see. Yeah, right down there, overlays. There's some hotkeys that you can show the grid and show the surface and things like that.
Yes, exactly.
There you go, right there at overlays. Yeah.
Yeah, right at overlays here.
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess it was the answer to your question is Alt 7 or Alt 6. You can quickly display any of those view controls.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
All right. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to go ahead and make sure those look halfway decent. His nose isn't really perfect, and the reason his nose isn't perfect is because of this lighting change that's happening over time on his nose. We can actually troubleshoot the track on his nose if we want, and I can show you guys how to do that. One of the things that I think we don't really cover a lot in these sorts of demos is we don't really talk about what do you do when your track isn't working exactly how you would like. And the answer to that is you tweak it until it looks right, okay? And there's no real solid way to tweak it, but there is a process you can do. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to like maybe expand the area that you're tracking in to sort of follow that, and you're also going to want to look for areas where the detail is the best, and then track to areas of the least detail. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to move to my previous keyframe. I'm actually going to delete it, and I'm going to restart tracking from the middle of this section here because this is better data. So we're just going to go ahead and track backwards from here. We'll actually end up with something that looks a little better, and then same thing from there to there. So basically, the short answer for how to fix your track is change your shape. Okay, look in different areas. All right.
Yeah, that's some great advice, and that's something that some people were asking is, if you see a track slipping, what do? And pretty much I think you or I, the first thing that we do is just go back a couple frames, adjust your shape, try the track, and see how that works.
Yes, exactly. Just fiddle with it.
And that actually aligns to the someone asking a question. They were saying, well, how many shapes? Because you mentioned that you try to track maybe 3 or 4 at the most at a time. And there's really no right or wrong answer there. But I think that from our perspective, Mary or my perspective is because we like to babysit and watch our tracks and make sure they're good. We'd rather be watching 3 or 4 at a time than watching 10 at a time. So it's just sort of how the artist chooses to work with Mocha.
Sure, it's your preference. If you have the attention span and the eye to detail to track 4 to 10 things at the same time, man, good on you. I don't. So, so what we're going to do from here is we are going to go ahead and define the areas that we want to remove from this image. So here's the thing. We could come in here and we could draw little circles, all around this area, and I'm going to call this like, marker 1, okay? And we could draw little circles around all of these, and we could hook them to our forehead track and our cheek tracks, and we could use these to remove. But if we do 5 individual shapes removing over 4 individual tracks, what we will actually do is we will slow Mocha down, okay? Because we'll be telling it to process 5 different images over, 37 frames, 4 different ways. It just starts to become an exponential problem. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to call this maths. And you see how I've already made a shape here? As long as I have any shape on the screen, I can load in a black and white map. Doesn't matter what the shape is. It can, look like this. It doesn't matter. Okay? We're going to come over here to our map clip, and we're going to import a map clip. And I've already basically done some mats for his shapes, and we're just going to import them. And they will sit right over the top. I want to make sure you guys can see this. Do you see these red dots that are over everything? Those are our mat shapes, okay?
So
And
Mary,
so those,
wanted to show the actual HiCon mat just to show that you've basically imported, you use Mocha to render out a mat pass, right? And then you
yes.
also have that mat pass there. Okay, there you go. Just so people can see that it certainly could be done within Mocha, but you just did this for speed. You've already basically rendered out.
Yes. Basically,
Okay.
I've done it for render speed, and I think that's important to note because if you try to remove multiple objects at once, it's going to increase your render time. Okay, so what I've done is for this demo, so that I don't basically so that I don't put our audience to sleep, I have optimized our render time by using mats for our remove. Okay. Um, Now, from here, what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to our Remove tab. Now, you noticed in Mocha for After Effects, we had the Clip tab, the Limbs tab, and the Track tab. Okay, those are available in Mocha for After Effects. In Mocha Pro, we can actually export to many more things than just After Effects. We can go to Combustion, Flame, Nuke, Shake, After Effects, and Final Cut. And then we can also export our tracking data to just about everything you can think of as well, including Nuke, Boris, Digital Fusion, Final Cut, smoke, flames, etc. So, don't feel like you're limited by what's in Mocha for After Effects. There are other options. Now, we also have the lens tool, the camera solve tool, insert, remove, and stabilize in Mocha Pro. We're going to be using the remove tab here. Okay, so here's how the remove tab works. I have my area defined that I want to remove. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to have to make a clean play clip for this because do you remember how I said earlier we were not going to be able to see behind these objects because they're stuck to this guy's skin, and because they're not moving over the surface of the skin, we can't remove them automatically. So what we're going to do is we're going to find like a nice crisp frame, okay, and we're going to make a clean plate out of this frame. Actually, yes, I did create the mat in Mocha and then I re-imported it. So, sorry, I just saw that question. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to jump over to Photoshop, and we can do, let's do Photoshop CC. 1 second.
Okay, so just while you're bringing that up, I'm going to cover a couple things. Mary did mention some of the, she's using Mocha Pro right now, and she mentioned some of the advanced features that are found in Mocha Pro. And one of the really interesting features is the Camera Solve tab, which is a 3D camera solve that we've created and found in Mocha Pro or in Mocha AE version 3.1 that you could upgrade your After Effects version to. And our last webinar was presented by Martin Brennan, who's our product manager, and that webinar is online on our website, which is all about the 3D camera solver. So it was a very interesting webinar, and if you missed it, I would encourage you guys to check it out.
All right. Well, so from here, what I'm actually going to do is I have to create a clean plate for this shot. Now, this clean plate for the shot, what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to go to my clean plate clip section in my remove tab, okay, and we're going to hit create. Now, what this does is this saves a clean plate inside of a folder, my results folder in this file, basically wherever I have made the directory for this shot. Okay, I leave my directories at default so they hang out where my footage hangs out. We're going to jump over here to Photoshop and we're going to load that clean plate in. So we're going to go to Open, and we're going to go to our desktop here, and we're going to navigate to my results folder. So that's going to be here. Now you can see I've already made a few, so we're just going to come in here. We're going to make sure that our latest clean plate is there, and we're going to hit Open. All right, now here's what I like to do. I'm actually very lazy about making my clean plates, so I use the Auto Heal tool in Photoshop, which is a great tool because basically what you do is it works a lot like our linear illumination modeling tool and the clone tool. So we just jump over our spot. What it does is it looks at the texture around it, looks at the value around it, and it tries to replace it. So it usually does a pretty good job, especially for skin. Now, there's one exception for this. We have some limitations with our linear illumination modeling the same way that the Heal tool does. So when I scrub over this, what we're going to end up with usually if I come close to a hard edge is it will pull that darkness, and I'm going to zoom in here so you can see what I'm talking about because I'm not sure with compression online you can see. But when I go next to a dark spot, what it does is it pulls the darkness into that section, Okay? So what we want to do here is we want to try to do this in little sections, okay, and sort of pull everything over the top so that we end up with lines that match his forehead. And then I'm going to just come over here to the smudge tool, and we're just going to sort of adjust those lines and just make sure that the values are correct. And we can actually use the smudge tool to just buff out the one on his nose because it's almost the same color as the highlight. Okay, so that is the kind of thing that you do to clean up those little tiny points. Now we're going to just hit save on this, and we're going to actually run into a problem with our removes here, but I'm just going to show you what that looks like right quick. I'm going to turn my overlays off, and we are going to render backwards here. And what I want to show you is that when we remove the stuff on his nose here, we're going to end up with some dark spots as it gets towards the beginning of the shot. Now, I don't know why that is taking so long, since it usually takes not long at all, but
Actually, well,
that's the law of demos.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so that's a law of demos. You see, I'm ending up with some results that are not ideal. Now, usually the reason that is because I don't have enough clean plates, and I can tell you why. Okay, let's just hit stop on the render. Okay, it's because we're having so much of an angle change. So when I talk about using one clean plate to clean up a whole shot, if that comes with a couple of caveats, right? If your background plane changes degree value more than 30 to 45 degrees, what you'll end up with is you'll end up with some artifacting because there's not enough information for Mocha to replace the objects with. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to come to frame 1, we're going to create a clean plate there, and we're going to come to frame 37, and we're going to create a clean plate there. Now the reason we're picking that is because those are the arcs of where he moves his head. Okay, so we're just going to load those back into Photoshop. We're just going to go File, Open, and we are going to just bring those right back in theory. Well, hold on 1 second. Gotta find them. There they are. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and we are going to cover over the top of these again. We're just going to blend that out, blend that out.
And so, Mary, I mean, when you're looking at, you're looking at your frames, and obviously these marks exist in every single frame. So you're trying to find some frames to clean up that you're basically going to use the remove module then to automatically remove all of them. How do you personally, select which frames? And I think that was a question someone asked. Why did you choose frame 20? Do you want to just?
I chose frame 20 because it is a crisp, clear frame where I can see most of the details on this guy's face. So I basically just scrub through the timeline until I see something that looks like a likely candidate. Now, likely candidates tend to be defined by how currently towards the camera is the plane that I will eventually be replacing. So, for instance, if you have, we're using this guy's face as an example, so let's continue to use it. This is a really good candidate for a frame because he is facing us as much as possible, okay? And then as he turns his head, these values will translate a lot better as they get towards the corners. What you don't want to do is you don't want to replace from the edge of a turn to the front of a turn. You always want to replace from the front of a turn to the edge of a turn, or an area of most details, least detail, so an area of crispness instead of blurriness, or an area of focus, or an area of high detail. So scale, if you have an object in this shot that is scaled large, you want to clean up the largest frame, not the smallest frame. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely. And some people were also asking, how did you go to Photoshop? And just if you want to go back to Mocha Pro and just kind of show like that it automatically will create like a clean plate, right?
Yes.
If you just select the clean plate button, right?
Yeah, all we do is we hit that create clean plate button. So that's how I was creating those clean plates in the first place. What it does is it essentially saves this frame as whatever I have defined in my preferences here for it to say, my preferences are TIFFs, your preferences can be whatever you like.
So the answer to that question is park on the frame that you wanted to paint, go to your Remove tab and hit Create, and then you'll find in your Mocha Pro or a project folder, you'll find a new frame that is labeled frame number, and it actually labels it Clean Plate.
Yes.
Thanks. And then actually another person asked, how do you render backwards? But we can cover that when you go to render.
Yeah. So, okay, so the deal with this is, let's just go ahead and go to the dates here. All right, we're going to load our clean plates back in. I'm actually going to add 37 and 1 in here. Now, I've already got frame 20 in here because that's the original plate I made. I'm going to load in frame 37 as well, and also frame 1. Okay, so we're going to just go ahead and hit OK, because basically we have this defined as frame 1, this is 37, and this is 20. Now we want to make sure that we put these back in at the places we took them from. Okay, so we want to make sure that that happens. So let's double check that. So we hit OK again. I think I said OK like 5 times. But to be fair, some of it was in the dialog box. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and we are going to hit re-render. So if you want to render backwards, you can jump back to this middle section and we hit render backwards.
There you go.
Render backwards is just the arrow, render backwards.
Exactly. It's simply telling what direction in the timeline you're rendering, and when you render, it just will render right over that frame.
Yeah. So, and if you ever want to undo your renders, and in this case it looks like we're caching old renders, basically what you do is you go to undo render in all frames. All right. And what we'll do is we'll just start hitting render from here. And let this think, and then what it'll do is it'll start to replace this object. Now, for some reason, it's not behaving 100% properly. I don't really know why that is, because I've done this demo probably 30 times.
Don't you want to do linear illumination, Mary? Or?
Yes, I do. But to be fair, oh, I know what. Okay, yep. This is a teaching moment.
It always helps when you screw up, right?
Yeah, it always helps when I screw up, because then I can say, well, I've done this 30 times and it's worked right every time. What's wrong here? Oh, what's wrong here is I'm doing a demo and got nervous. Basically, what you do is you check use clean plates exclusively, okay? And the reason you do that, as illustrated earlier, is because if you don't, what Mocha will do is it will try to replace these frames with other frames of the dot. Okay, so because we didn't use clean plates exclusively, Mocha is also looking at other frames to replace it. So that's why we end up with the white edges for everything. And so if you ever run into a situation where you see that, that's a pretty good indicator that you need to use clean plates exclusively. Basically, anytime you use clean plates for something that you can't see behind, you need to use clean plates exclusively down here.
Right.
Okay?
There's no frames that exist in this shot where the track marks are not. The track marks are on his face in every single frame, so we always need to use the clean plate. Right.
Exactly. Now, with linear illumination modeling, okay, by default it's set to none. Interpolate is going to give you a huge render time hit, so I don't normally use it unless I really need to, and that's for things like caustics and other really delicate lighting changes. But mostly linear will get you where you need to go. Interpolate is for very difficult lighting changes, and it's very, very render intensive. So if you need something done fast, don't use this. Use linear illumination modeling. What linear illumination modeling does is linear illumination modeling works just like the heal tool. So when we remove these sections, what it will do is it will match the values over time. Okay, and we're going to hit render forward on this, and you'll see what I mean. And now Mocha will remove these automatically. Now that I'm not making a mistake in my own demo. And what we'll do is we'll render forward, and you can see that it's matching the lighting over time as we render forward. Now what you will see too, though, is you will see a limitation of our linear illumination modeling, and that is we're pulling in darker values from the corner of his nose here into this shape, and the reason we're doing that is because it's touching that shape. So this is one of those things where I say Mocha will get you most of the way there for many shots, but there's going to be times where you want to fix stuff in After Effects or Nuke or whatever your paint program of choice is, and I'm going to show you how to do that because it's worth showing you how to use tracking data with paint tools to fix these sorts of very minor problems that happen over time. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to stop because I'm not going to make you sit through the whole render. Suffice to say, it renders, and I have a previous render that I'm going to load into the shot. So let's jump back over to After Effects and let's talk a little bit about what we do to finish shots. Because when we use our remove module, yeah, it's fast and it works really well, but what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to blend our remove plate with our original plate. So I'm going to load in our mats and I'm going to load in our remove. Now here's our remove. Thank you. And we're going to load that over the top here. And what we're going to do is we're going to play this forward so you can see what the render looks like. And you can see we've got some edge problems on his nose here. Okay? But if you were really going to scrutinize this very, very closely, what you would also notice is that there's no grain on this remove. So we're going to fix that. We're going to bring our mats down right here. We're just going to load them above. We're going to use those as a Luma mat for our remove area. We're actually going to blur this Luma mat because I'm a real fan of soft edges when we blend footage together because it's less noticeable. Now I'm going to use my favorite box blur again. We're just going to do like a little soft edge on that. We're just going to do a blur radius of 5. And what we're going to do is we're just going to put that over the top of everything. Now already that gets rid of the hard edges that you might have seen when we were playing the shot. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in here so you can see what's up, and we are going to go ahead and drag a remove frame down here. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to do some very quick painting in Photoshop. I mean, not Photoshop, After Effects. So I don't know if you guys have messed with this a lot, but there's some pretty cool tools in After Effects for painting. I'm gonna have to move this window. Okay, and I'm gonna close this Mocha import render window right quick. But suffice to say, this is a great tool, guys. And what we're gonna do is we're going to go to our paintbrush here, and we're going to select some paint tools. Now I'm gonna use, I want to say, a 17 round here. And a 17 pixel round, and I'm going to do a selection on this guy's nose, and we're just going to paint some of this out. I'm actually going to come in here and we're going to make a nice soft line there as well. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to blend those together. So I'm going to do my favorite box blur. Actually, we're going to go to our effects controls right quick though, and we're going to do paint on transparent. All right, and that will erase the background from underneath now that we're done painting. And we're going to go to Effect. We're going to go to Blur and Sharpen. We're going to do a box blur right quick because, again, it's fast. And we're going to see how that looks in our comp. Okay? So we're going to cover over that sort of mark on this guy's nose. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start doing some pretty simple stuff. We're going to just come in here and we are going to go back to Mocha. We're going to grab the nose tracking data and we are going to use that to drive this paint effect. So you can see our effects here under our paint. Okay, and you can see that these begin at the middle of our shot and that they continue on. We're actually going to drag these backwards so that they're there for the whole shot, and then we're going to adjust opacity throughout the shot to blend this because obviously we don't want it in the same spot on the shot the entire time.
So Mary, you're going to track that frame of that one paint stroke across the whole the movement of the actor.
Yes, because I don't want to hand animate it. That's like...
Yeah. No, this is very cool because I think a lot of people are used to using Mocha maybe just to track an insert or maybe for roto, but the idea of keeping Mocha open and jumping back and forth between your compositor, to track paint strokes and to track little elements is just a really useful tool.
Yeah, it's actually the only way I work. I've become very, very lazy. As far as tracking and stuff like that goes. I don't like to do a lot of stuff by hand because I don't get as good results. Even if Mocha is slightly off, it's still like, for a track that I do, and it's usually not. But even if it is, the matching of the motion is so natural that I end up getting better results if I don't do it by hand. So I'm going to export this tracking data here, and what we're going to do is we're going to export After Effects transform data, just the transform data, and I'm going to copy this to the clipboard. We're going to go back over to After Effects. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to make a layer, new, null object. Okay? We're going to go to the first frame of the shot, even though it's not intuitive. We have to go to the first frame of the shot, paste in data. And so we go Edit, Paste. Okay, and now I have that motion in this shot. Now one more thing we're going to do here though is we're going to go ahead and click on the anchor point and we're going to turn that off. That's not necessary for this, and it will actually damage my movement in my shot. So make sure you turn the anchor point off. And I may need to turn off rotation or scale depending on how this looks. I'm gonna judge my paint stroke and see how it moves, and then go from there. So let's go back to our shot where our paint stroke is aligned where we want it. Okay, and we're gonna go to like there, I think. And what we're gonna do is we are gonna go ahead and we are going to drag we're just going to pick whip this to that layer. So if we've done everything correctly, our paint stroke should follow his nose throughout the shot. Okay, so that looks pretty good. That's nice and following along with his face. So what we do from here is we make some judgment calls. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn visibility off for both of these layers, and I'm going to make some lighting judgment calls, and I'm going to try to match that down here by hand animating some fades. So in my paint stroke that I have here, I'm going to come down here to transform. I'm going to go to opacity. I'm going to turn the animation button on that. And I'm going to blend this to 0 where I think it falls off. Okay, and so now that will move an opacity between those two sections. Same thing for here. Still should look like 100% on here. So I'm going to make a keyframe, and then we're going to look for where it goes off, and we're going to make a keyframe to 0 there. Okay, so what we'll end up with when we turn our layer back on, let's zoom out so you guys can see, is we'll end up with a nice cleaned highlight fix on this guy's nose. Okay, so you can do this as many times
very
as you
impressive, like. Very impressive. So Mary, as an artist, obviously you did this very, very quickly. You removed the markers from this actor's face in about 15 minutes or less.
Yeah.
As an artist, when using traditional tools or just using After Effects or Nuke, how long would you traditionally take you if you were not using something like the Remove tool in Mocha Pro?
Well, it depends. It depends on whether or not you're used to using tracking with painting or not. If you're used to using tracking with painting and you use point tracks to drive paint a lot, you have to do less tweaking than you do it by hand. But if I had to do this by hand, it'd probably take me a couple of hours because I would have to like repaint and repaint and repaint over time. Now, I've been a paint artist since the days of having to paint frame by frame. The first time I started doing paint work was probably 8 years ago using combustion. And that wasn't really, there were point tracks you could use to hook up paint to, but it didn't work very well, so you ended up having to do a lot of paint by hand. And I actually damaged the nerves in my thumb doing shots because I was painting so fast all the time, and it was just not. It would take hours. Is essentially the short answer. The short hour is it would take hours to frame by frame paint something to look seamless, whereas in Mocha I can turn something that should take hours into a couple of minutes of a job.
Very cool.
So, yeah. So and I still do some paint work freelance. I mean, I guess a couple of months ago I did some paint work where we had to get rid of a reflection on glass, and it didn't seem like a shot where Mocha would have been very useful, but Mocha actually helped me sell the shot by helping me track the grime of the glass actually back onto the paintwork itself. So it makes it where you can get away with a lot of stuff. You can get away with a lot of stuff you didn't used to be able to get away with. Okay. So
excellent. Well, thanks for sharing that little bit more insight into the Mocha Pro module, Mocha Pro Remove module. What's your next example here?
The next example here is what we're going to do is we're going to actually show you how to use the insert tool. I actually really like the insert tool. I think it's a wildly underutilized tool inside of Mocha, and I don't really know why that is. I think a lot of times people use Mocha as a fire extinguisher and don't use it to creatively troubleshoot shots. And I think it can really give you the edge to creatively troubleshoot shots and sort of get a step ahead above the other people in your office. So we're going to call this webinar 1, and we're going to just go ahead and hit OK. Now, here's the thing. I shot this short film with a couple of friends. This actually is a local LA actor. If you guys need actors for your short films, I recommend Sheldon Morley. He's a SAG accredited actor. in Los Angeles, and we did this practical makeup for him. We went out into the woods up in the Pacific Palisades, and we shot this film. And because our shoot was so mobile, we didn't really have the ability to add proper gore and stuff like battle damage in on his head. So we were going to fix this in post. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to come in here, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the Mocha tracks and the Mocha insert tool to put makeup on his head without having to do a whole lot of work. This is going to be a 2D fix, okay? So we're going to come in here, and we're going to track the top part of his head here. Just close that up. Too many points. I don't like working with tons and tons of points when it's not necessary. It just seems like a waste of energy. And we're going to track this side of his head here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm not really looking for hard edges or anything. I'm just trying to track this planar area up here, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to actually track this side of his head as well. Get this sort of cheek area. All right, so we're going to track this other plane as well, and we're going to call this cheek track. Okay, I don't know why I hit space there, but we're going to call this cheek track, and we're going to call this head track. Okay, and what we're going to do from here is we are going to track both these sections. We're going to do the perspective track again because obviously handheld camera. We shot this with probably the world's most ghetto Steadicam, so which was literally just a tripod with a weight belted to it. So it's not exactly the steadiest shot in the world. We're going to go ahead and track these forward. As we track these, what I want you to pay attention to, and let me just go ahead and turn this on so you can see. We're going to track this forward, and what I want you to pay attention to is the way that this plane shifts when he talks. Okay, it's very subtle, but you want to watch for that kind of thing because that's what sells your motion. Okay, I know I keep talking about how to sell the realism of a painted shot, but like these little details where this shifts just a little bit when he opens his mouth or closes his mouth, or or tilts his head, that's going to be really, really important for not making the track slide and for not making the makeup look like it doesn't belong on his head. Okay, you can get away with like half pixel shifts and stuff like that as long as the overall thrust of the motion matches perfectly. So I hope that makes sense. And we're just going to wait for this to track. I mean, I understand that like it's a little boring to watch tracks, but it's really important when you are tracking to make sure that you do babysit the track a little bit, because if this grid starts warping or popping or shifting in a way that doesn't look like it belongs in the scene, what you'll need to do is, earlier how I redrew my shape, you'll need to redraw your shape and make sure that you look for trouble spots. Now, trouble spots people often run into are reflections that move or moving shadows that move. So if like there were a tree here and it were casting dappled light on his face, I would want to try to avoid the dappled lighting because Mocha would start tracking the shadow itself and not the detail. Okay, because Mocha doesn't know the difference. It's a machine.
Yeah, I think that people appreciate actually seeing the track in real time as well, because they get the idea that sometimes on demonstrations that everything looks seamless and easy, and then when they go back into their own job, it's not as easy. So I think people actually do appreciate seeing a shot tracked the entire way. And
In real time.
yeah, and even about this shot, you would sort of look at it and say, well, the side of his head is not really a plane, right? It's round. But I think it's important to that people can kind of understand that they can use Mocha to track things that are not necessarily flat objects, right?
Sure. I mean, Mocha, you can get away with a certain amount of roundness, though if you're tracking a sphere, like if his head were a sphere, I would want to only track like this section. So if that were the case. Obviously that's not the case, but like when you're tracking something that's truly, truly round, think of it again in terms of low poly model and how it would look if it was a very grid-like model. So yeah, you can get away with tracking curves and stuff like this, but if you track like the top of somebody's arm, try tracking the top of their arm and not necessarily the sides. If it's close up, stuff like that will help your track anyway. So it doesn't have to be round, but when you do track round things, think about it. Is what I'm saying. All right, so we've got our track, and we've got our track solid. What we're going to want to do here is we're actually going to want to do a rough alignment of our surface tool. I'm going to turn the grid off. A rough alignment of our surface tool to the side of his face in a way that looks like it makes sense to us. I'm going to do the same thing with this top surface tool as well. Okay, And we're going to just sort of align this in a way that will give us some rough placement so that when we get into the insert tool, we can start to move this. Sorry, I had to take a drink of water.
Sure. So you could certainly export these track data now to After Effects or to another application, but instead of doing that, you're actually going to use another module that's found in Mocha Pro.
Exactly. I'm going to use the insert module instead. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to our insert clip, and we can import a image onto our surface tool. So we're going to just import, and for his head here, I'm going to import this really gross looking scalp cut that I've made, and then we're going to adjust this and make sure that it sort of looks placement-wise about like how I want it to be. Okay. And then we're also going to take this side of his face, and these are PNGs, by the way. They're transparent PNGs. So, you know, make sure if you're going to bring something in with transparency that it actually has transparency. Okay? And we're going to use this as well on the side of his face here. Now, the thing about these is when you use stuff like this, when you use like, you know, nasty sorts of cuts and stuff like that, you're going to have to like paint some of these yourself or build them yourself. Okay? And the way you do that is you just load it in Photoshop or something like that. And what you do is you can either, if you're not a good painter, you can do a Google image search and find yourself some gore. I mean, just look up gore, and like Google is happy to oblige. And all you have to do is you have to change an image in order to use it. Now, you can't just use a straight-up image that somebody else took in your work, or at least I don't recommend it unless you want to make trouble for yourself. But what you can do is, you know, artistic copyright law says that you have to change it over 70%. So as long as you change the image over 70%, use Google image search and change your images and work from there. That's just that doesn't have anything to do with Mocha, but that does have to do with, like, you know, as an artist, you know, it's good to know that kind of stuff. All right, so I'm going to place these things, and now I'm going to jump over to my insert tool. Now in my insert tool, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that I really enjoy. I'm going to come over here to my mesh warper. Now, this is, when I say that this is underutilized, I mean I hardly ever see anybody use this. But we have a grid warper down here, and basically in our insert tab, in the insert tab, inside of the insert tab, is something that's called the warp tool, and it's down here at the bottom, and it's like in this lonely, unused space. And what it does is it's a mesh warping tool, and you can show the mesh. And we're just going to do a 2-level mesh. And we're going to adjust this. I'm going to turn our surface tool off. We're going to adjust this according to the contours that are going on our actor's face here. Okay, so we're just going to come in here and adjust these contours. And you see how I'm trying to make some curves where curves should be, and I'm going to try to like sort of push this in where it needs to be, and then pull this out as we get towards the jawline. Now I'm not being like really I'm not being really aggressive with these curves because people's faces, you know, are very subtle, and I don't want to overdo it. But this kind of thing will really, really sell your work. And again, we're going to come over here and do the same thing. We have our grid warp on, and we're just going to sort of pull this out over his hairline a little bit. And we're just going to sort of push this in here, push that in there, and adjust that shape. Now from here, what we can do is we can actually adjust the way this blends with the shot itself. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and turn our mesh warp off, and we're going to go back to our mats, right? And like basically where we change our mats, and I'm going to soften these edges where I think they're appropriate to soften, except for what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over my comp, and I'm going to go use layer mats, and I'm going to pay attention to how that actually looks. Okay, so we're going to use our layer mats. Let's soften this where I think it needs to be softened. Okay, make it blend with the shot more. All right, same thing for this down here. We're going to come in here, and we are going to overall relax our curves, and we're going to soften our edges as well. We're going to make sure that we're using our layer mats again. We're just going to make sure that this looks like it blends in with the scene. Okay, so from here, we're just going to go ahead, and I'm actually going to take my edge value, and I'm going to actually pull this up. And I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn my surface tool on, and I'm going to scale this up a little bit so that it runs into this shape as well. Okay, because I like the way that looks better. And like what you can do is you can judge on the fly how you want this to look. Now I'm also going to go back to my comp here, and I'm going to actually lower the opacity of the shot to about a 0.8, and the same thing for this shape down here to about a 0.8. The reason I'm doing that is because these are awfully saturated, and I kind of want to blend them with the shot a little bit and make them look like there's texture underneath them from his head. Now, from here, what we can do is we can just turn our overlays off, all right, and we can play that through and see how that looks. And what we can see is we can see that this looks like it's moving correctly with the side of his face, okay, and that the edges are moving appropriately, all right. And from here, we can just go to render. And what I want to do here is I actually want to turn my motion blur on. This means that this shot will render out with motion blur on those edges as he moves his head. Okay, so I'm going to render out both of these with motion blur. We're going to hit render forward, and what this will do is this will render out this both of these little makeup bits as their own raster images. Okay, but they're going to have the grid warp on them, and they're going to have motion blur, and they're going to have their own alpha channel. Or we can just use this whole thing because it also renders out a comp, like a simple A over B comp of both of these. Now, I actually, if it were me and I were finishing the shot, I would take this back over to After Effects and I would do some final comping, like just to adjust colors and stuff like that. But you don't really need to do that for this right here, because you've seen me comping After Effects before, and I'm just going to show you some more
right.
effects. So, but I did want to show you how to use the grid tool.
Right. So the insert tool is just, it allows you for some basic insert compositing and screen compositing. But I think it is cool to point out that it does have that powerful mesh warper involved in there as well. So
Yep.
you could certainly render out your elements as tracked with alpha, with mesh warp and motion blur, and then comp them in your compositor, right?
Yes, exactly. It just depends on how you want to do your workflow. Like, this is not an acceptable final comp. I mean, it would be acceptable for something on the Sci-Fi channel, but like not really, for professional work. There needs to be a lot of color correction in the shot and stuff like that to knock it back down to something that's like, gonna be good. So.
Right.
But so it just depends on your workflow.
Also, a couple people did ask, well, couldn't you just do this in After Effects? And yes, of course, we're not trying. Obviously, these, in the webinar, we do try to show you things you could do in Mocha Pro, but a talented compositor could do, could certainly achieve this using just the Mocha AE version and After Effects and some warping tools within After Effects as well.
Sure. What I like about this is the generation of the alpha channels and the generation of the natural-looking motion blur that moves with the track. But if you have solutions for that you use in After Effects on an everyday basis, please do go ahead and use those. So. Yeah,
and someone just asked, can you add grain here? And yeah, Mocha does not have any grain tools, so you would end up bringing this shot back into a compositor and adding your grain.
You sure would, and you and yes, of course, you can also use video inserts as well. I definitely recommend that people finish their shots in a true compositing program like Nuke or After Effects or Smoke. That's definitely something I recommend. But I did want to show you guys how to use the grid warper inside of Mocha so that you can see how it moves with the shot. That you don't have to go back and forth. The bonus here being that you don't have to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and check your data over and over again.
Very cool. Yeah, and I know in the past a lot of flame artists, they really like the warp tool because they had some difficulties linking bicubics or different distortion effects within flame, so they would actually use Mocha Pro to render out inserts with mesh warp. But
sure.
Cool. Well, we're actually time is encroaching, so let's see if we can
go
through our last example here, and then we'll finish up the webinar with a couple more questions and answers. But again, everyone, please continue to type in your questions, and we'll try to keep it going.
Sure. I see I've been poked by the Sci-Fi channel. That's wonderful. I actually. I wouldn't know sci-fi quality stuff if I didn't watch it all the time. So okay, let's go over here to let's start a new file here. And actually, what we're going to do is we're going to do a a project where we actually isolate a bunch of different shapes on a girl and clean up her face. Now, this is not the exact same as a previous demo I have done, but it's going to be close. Basically, what we're going to do is um, we're going to talk about how to isolate roto shapes on a face, and we're going to basically tie in everything that we've used for this shot. Now, what we've got here is we've got this lovely girl. This is actually Mackenzie Jameson. She's another wonderful actress in the LA area. If you want to use her for short films, you should absolutely go to mackenziejameson.com. What we're going to do is we are going to clean up her face and make her look about. Well, we're not really gonna make her prettier because she's always very pretty. But what we're gonna do is we're going to make her look more ephemeral and ethereal and not of this world. Okay, because right now she looks like a human being, and we want her to look like, you know, a perfect elf. So the way that we would do this is the first thing I would do is you know, just like all normal people in the world, she's got a little bit of imperfections in her skin here. So she's got a mole here that you can see. She's got a little bit of a blemish we're trying to cover up here and one here. Okay. Now, everybody gets those all the time, but as far as creative work and movie work goes, we tend to want to get rid of those. So what we're going to do is we're going to track these sections that we want to remove these blemishes on. And just like we do normal removes, we're just going to track these sections. And we're going to come in here and we're going to define the areas that are moving behind the objects we want to remove, and we're going to track those so that we can remove them. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn perspective on for all of these shapes.
A lot of people were asking, just to reiterate, when you automatically smooth all the points on one shape, you just do that with a quick right click?
Yeah, no, I just click and drag over all of the over all the points. And
okay,
then
yeah, so you select them all and then adjust them.
Yes, I tend to click and drag for points, and the reason I do that is because I don't necessarily always want to select all of the same points. So, like, let's say I just want to select this top part, you know, I can adjust the top part. If I want to do the whole shape, I select the whole shape. Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah,
and then
sure that clarifies for some people.
Yeah, it's just relaxing for a curve and pulling tight for a point. They're X-splines. They're very, very fast to use. I'm sorry if I use them too quickly. Sometimes I forget what it's like to be new at Mocha, and thank you for reminding me. All right. So we've got these lovely tracks. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to remove these sections. So we're just going to go ahead and come in here, and I'm going to define the areas that I want to clean up. And we're going to define these areas that we want to clean up. And we're going to go ahead, well, I'm doing that thing where I'm not naming my layers. So I'm going to call this neck track. I'm going to call this left cheek. Call this right cheek. Because even just with a couple of layers, I was starting to get confused. We're going to call this right remove. We're going to call this left remove. And we're going to call this down here our mole remove. And we're going to link our mole remove to our neck track. We're going to go back to frame 1 where we have these originally placed, and we're going to link L remove to L cheek, and we're going to link right remove to right cheek. Okay, so now we have all our areas we want to remove defined, and we have our background tracks defined. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a clean plate, and we're going to use this to remove the shot. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a clean plate in the area that I have the most detail. Okay, so I'm going to scroll until this shape is wholly on the screen, and I can see all of these shapes together. So this is another example of how you pick the plate that you want to make your clean plate. Okay, her face is mostly head-on. I can see the mole in her neck that I want to remove. This is why I'm picking this as my clean plate. So we're going to go over here to our remove, and I'm going to go ahead and hit create clean plate, and then in Photoshop, just going to load this up. Same way we did it last time. Going to go to Liz Cleanup here, and we're going to go to results, and we are going to show our details here. We're going to see the most recent one we made, which is going to be this one here. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to do that same cleanup thing. We're just going to use the heal tool and remove her blemishes. And it's really that fast. It doesn't need to be a thing. We're going to hit save. We're going to go back over to Mocha Pro. Sorry, I was clicking on the wrong program. And we are just going to go use clean plates exclusively. We're going to use linear illumination modeling, and we're going to go ahead and we are going to make sure that our clean plate is loaded on all our other shots. Now you notice I'm just going down here to clean plate clip, and I am selecting the clean plates that I've already made. Okay, and we can go ahead and render this backwards. Now, before when I said that we needed to optimize this, I was very serious, because what we're going to do here is we're removing 3 shapes over 3 other shapes. So this is actually going to take some time to render. And I actually already have this rendered, but let's just see what a frame looks like so that you guys can see what it looks like, if ever decides to. Usually the first frame of the remove is what takes the longest to process, and then it speeds up from there. So if you're ever like rendering something and you're on the first frame of your remove and you find that it is slow and sticking, just give it some time to start thinking and then let it continue on. Okay? And there we go. All right? So I'm not going to make you sit through this whole remove. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and say, suffice to say, that's a remove. And we'll show you what it looks like. So we're going to make a new composition over here. We're going to import our footage. So we're going to go over here to Liz Cleanup. We're going to pull up her original plate, which is right here. Okay? And we're going to go to File, Import, and we are going to bring in our render as well. And we're going to load that over the top. And you can see.
All right, so this is the pass that
our
term moles are removed. Okay.
Yes, that's it. So that's one pass, and we're moving on because we have precious little time.
Yeah, we have a couple more minutes, so I think we should quickly try to show some of the cool stuff in After Effects. And I think a couple questions, some people are, who might have missed it first were asking just how to get the data back to After Effects. And also the concern is that, this is not only a Mocha Pro webinar, but to simply get the roto data back to our After Effects is something that Mary is going to show. And another question was that someone was asking about the Mocha import script. And Mocha import script is purely a tool that it's a very great tool and very affordable tool, a script for After Effects users, but is not necessary for the After Effects to Mocha to After Effects workflow.
Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I didn't have really anything to add to that. But yeah, this is not just a Mocha for Mocha Pro demo. I feel like I've tried to show how to blend things in After Effects quite a bit. Now the thing is for this section of the demo is going to be anything that you can do in After Effects, and the Mocha that comes for free in After Effects, which is why I'm trying to tie everything together here. What we can do here is, just like how we sort of blended the skin tone for Edward Norton, we do the same thing for our character here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to select this shape here. But we're also going to add makeup, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about how we clean up specific features as well. So we're going to track the sides of her face here too. Now I'm actually staying away from her eyes because I actually like the way her eyes look. I don't really think there's much under her eyes that we need to fix. But there is some skin on her face that needs to be fixed. Now, you can use Beauty Box for this kind of stuff. Beauty Box is a plugin that's actually, it's a really great plugin. I really like it. I actually have it on this machine. But one of the things it doesn't do is it's not very selective about the areas that it decides to ignore. So if I use Beauty Box, it will try to keep a lot of this detail in here, but it will also try to smooth over things like her nose and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily want all of those smoothed over, and especially the baby hairs here on the side of her head. I don't want to smooth those over. Those are very feminine and nice, and I want to keep them. Okay, so what you don't want to do is you don't want to do like generalized blurs over the top of everything, because that's just not going to give you that nice of a look. It'll just give you a very plastic look. And I find that really and truly the devil is in the details. It's all about keeping the details together. Now, from here, what we can do, let me just finish tracking this on the other side as well. We're just going to finish tracking this shot. I also am going to show you how to track things like mouths and things like that as they move together. And this is sort of where sorry, I was reading a question. This is where what we want to do is we want to make sure that we split things up into planar data, and it's not necessarily the way you think. It's not necessarily. That's why it's taking so long. It's not necessarily going to be the way you think it is. What we're going to do is we're going to split her mouth up into 4 different shapes, okay? And we're going to use those to track her mouth. So as soon as we're done tracking her head here, we're going to do that. But first, we're going to take these shapes and we're going to take them to After Effects, and we're going to use this as a blend on her face. So we're going to take all 3 of these shapes. We're going to call this our cheek 2, and we're going to call this L cheek 2, and we're going to call this forehead. We're going to take all of these, and they're all visible. So we're going to go to Export Shape Data, and we're going to go to All Visible Layers. We're going to copy this to the clipboard. We're going to go over to After Effects. We're going to basically come in here, and we're going to duplicate this shape. Okay, this render shape, not shape, this render pass, and we're going to go to Edit, and I'm actually going to do Paste Mocha Mask for these, and I'm just going to vary over the whole of all of these masks. We're just going to go ahead and do like a little 10 pixel feather on these so that they feather out. All right, we're going to do our same effect, blur and sharpen, and we're going to use that same box blur because I'm telling you it's the fastest. You can use Gaussian if you want to. I don't really care what kind of blur you use, but I use this for a specific reason, and that's because it's fast. Okay, and we're going to blow away a lot of that detail there. We're going to end up with these nice sort of soft face shapes. Now we're also going to come down here because I don't like to 100% blow everything away. Like I said, we're going to bring this down to about 80. Okay, so that it's a blend over the top and we don't lose all of the highlight that we have over here. Okay, and we're going to do that same procedure where we add our grain back in. So let's go to our noise and grain, and let's go to match grain. What we're going to do is we're going to put this on final, and we're going to go ahead and use our original layer as our grain matching layer. And this may be one of those times where the grain doesn't perfectly match, but it does a pretty good job. Okay, so the grain is matched, her face is soft, and her eyes are nice and crisp. Okay, now for this shot, what we actually did is we wanted her eyes to look alien. We didn't want them to look human. We wanted them to look golden and very nice. So the way we're going to do that is we're actually going to come over here to Layer, New. We're going to make a new solid. And we're going to pick like a sort of golden color. All right, and I'm going to make it as saturated as possible. All right, we're going to put that over the top. I'm going to come over back to Mocha Pro. I'm going to hide all of these shapes. I'm going to look for where her eyes are the most round, which actually happens to be the front of the shot. And we're going to come in here and we are going to just draw some very quick shapes right around her eyeballs. Well, right around her irises, because her eyeball would be the entire eye, but I think you know what I mean. And we are going to soften this shape. Now again, you can do this in Mocha for After Effects or Mocha Pro. It does not matter what version of Mocha you have as long as you have tracking and spline data. We're going to call this left eye. We're going to call this right eye. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and like let these track through the shot. We don't even really need to track perspective so much. I'm going to leave skew on those so that it does change shape a little bit as we track over time. And we're just going to track these both through the scene. If we don't want them to move anywhere, we'll just hit stabilize and watch what the shapes do around the shape. Now this is an important thing to note. When you're doing roto and stuff in Mocha, you can use the stabilize button. This will not actually stabilize the shot, but it will stabilize your view around that shape so that you can correct your roto shape very quickly without having to worry that much about dealing with following it across the screen. It
Yeah,
also makes it very easy to see the edges.
I think that's a great tool to show people. I think a lot of people don't know about that. You're simply stabilizing the viewer, and then you can, it keeps your work area much more in focus as you kind of deal with some of the small keyframe adjustments.
Exactly. So in this case, it looks like leaving skew on was not the greatest thing in the world because it does look like it skews my shape a little bit. But I'm not really willing to retrack it because I'm just using the shape data, so it doesn't really matter. So what I'm actually going to do is just adjust the shape to compensate for it. Now what we end up with is nice solid roto shapes that we can use to define her eyes a little better. So what we're going to do is we're going to select both of these. Well, we're just going to select them. We're going to go export shape data. We're going to do all visible layers again and copy to the clipboard. Go over to After Effects. Make sure we are on the first frame. I cannot stress that enough, guys. And we're going to go to Edit, and I'm going to do Paste Mocha Mask again. All right, so we end up with these nice little orange shapes around her eyes. We're going to take these eye shapes. We're going to feather them about 2 pixels, okay, and that's because hard edges look really funny. And we're going to take this and we're going to do a blend mode of soft light right over the top and see how that looks. Now, I can see in here, let this load, I can see in here that this is actually going a little outside of the area I would like it in. I think to get a little bit better blend, what I might do is this. Instead of doing a 2 pixel feather, I might do a 5 pixel feather, and I might do a -5 pixel mask on this. And in fact, I might increase this feather to like 10 maybe. Okay, so now I end up with like soft eyes that look really nice and fall off to a hard line at the edge so that they look like they have depth, okay? We have one more thing that I want to do here though. I'm going to duplicate this render here. I'm going to drag this over the top. And do you see how our highlights here are they're just yellow looking and weird? We don't want that, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to do one more edit. We're going to do a Paste Mocha Mask. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to use this as a lighten layer. We're just going to hit lighten, and that will pop our highlights back out to white over the top of her eye. Okay, what that does is that adds another set of realism, and it actually adds the light back into the shot so that it doesn't look like she's no longer in the scene. It's a really subtle thing, but it works really, really well. So make sure that you pay attention to those sorts of details and you don't end up blowing all your data away. The last thing we're not going to zoom in on our nose like that. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to adjust some of her digital makeup here. So what we're going to do is we're going to define her lips more, define her cheeks more, and then define some shapes around her eyes to add makeup. So we're going to jump back over to Mocha again. And again, you can do this in any version of Mocha. And what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in on her mouth here.
And this is good, Mary, because someone actually had a question in one of your first shots. They were saying, well, what if the mouth is moving organically? How would you deal with this kind of shot?
Well, we deal with it like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something that I tell you not to do all the time. I pretty much say don't track and roto at the same time. And there are exceptions to that rule, okay? Because it's not really a hard, fast rule. We're going to track and roto this at the same time. So we're going to define these edges of her mouth, all right, and I'm going to soften these shapes. All right, I'm going to actually make the point here at the edges hard. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to use our Join Layers tool. This is a really cool tool. What this does, this is in many versions of version 3 of Mocha, whether it's After Effects or Pro. We're going to join these 2 layers together. So you see how there now becomes a seam between these 2 shapes? The seam between these 2 shapes means that what we have here is a joined set of shapes. So we're going to track this side, we're going to track this side, but we've broken it up in the middle, and we've broken it up in the middle because of the way mouths move, okay? Now, we're going to come in here, we're going to do the same thing for this side of the mouth, and again, we're just going to soften those lines. Same thing here. We're going to soften these lines. All right. And we're going to join these 2 layers together. Okay. Lest no man put them asunder. Okay.
Cool. And that join
And
that that
now,
that join layer tool is in the new Mocha AE that ships with Adobe Cloud. Um, just to point that out as well.
yes, it's a great tool. Like, it's an incredible tool. I'm
You're
really glad we
basically
added
you're
it.
basically like parenting or a parent-child relationship between those points.
Yes. So I've parented the corners of her mouth together, and I've parented the middle of her mouth together. Okay. So these are important distinctions. Okay. Think of the low poly model scenario. What we're doing is we're sort of fake modeling 2D geometry. Again, we're going to hit perspective on these because the perspective is changing, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to call this left top lip. We're going to call this RT lip. So we're going to call this LB lip, and then RB lip. So right bottom, left bottom, etc. We're going to go ahead and track these forward. And what you will see is that Mocha will do very, very well at hanging on to these sections as she closes her mouth and opens them and what have you. Now, you are going to have to do some corrections here. You will have to adjust edges. As she opens and closes her mouth, you will have to change a little bit of the roto, but it really only should be about 2 or 3 keyframes. It shouldn't be crazy amounts of work. With Mocha, when you do roto, you will have to do adjustments over time pretty much constantly. But even as she opens her mouth here, you see that we end up getting nice, easy shapes that follow her mouth as she moves. So we're just going to let this get to the end, and then we're going to adjust some shapes. And what I like to do is I like to get to the end of a shot if something's moving in a very fluid way, and I like to adjust it at the end, and then I like to swing between those two shapes and adjust where they are the most off. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm just going to come in here. And we're going to adjust this shape. All right. And we're going to pull backwards until we get to an area that needs to be adjusted. So this needs to be adjusted here. This needs to be adjusted here. So one of the reasons this is going to need a little bit of adjustment is because what we're running into is the outline changing. It's not even so much that the track itself is changing; it's that the outline is changing. So that's one of the. What happened there? Oh, this is going to be a teaching moment. Okay, so here's a thing that happens in Mocha sometimes. What you can end up with, and it's going to be this shape here. Which one of you is it going to be? Sometimes the surface tool can go behind the camera. When that happens, what you can end up with is you can end up with a funky part of the track. So what we can do to fix that is we can go to Manual Track. We can delete the keyframes that are the culprits here, or we can adjust them in the actual. We can adjust them in the dope sheet as well.
That's
But I'm just
funny
going to
because
delete them by hand.
someone just asked about the dope sheet, but we really don't have time to cover that right now. But yeah, just good to know. I'm glad you brought up the dope sheet because again, that's also another feature that has been updated in the new Mocha AE that ships with Creative Cloud, as well as with the shipping versions of Mocha AE v3 and Mocha Pro. Is a much improved keyframe module.
Yes, and I don't want to take too much time away, but I do want to say like how to. I haven't run into that with this demo before, but it's a demo and it's live, so there's just going to be times where you run into that. So it's important to know how to fix it, and that's one of the ways that you fix that problem. So just so you know, in the future. Now, what we're going to do is I'm probably going to actually load a previous shot where this is not a problem. So let me just go ahead and actually load that because we don't have time to fix it right now. Suffice to say, you can delete the keyframes and retrack. So let's go over here and let's go to, which is our most recent, this one. Nice, because I renamed the folder, it doesn't like it. Okay, we're going to go to here, and we're going to go to here. We're just gonna roll with it. Just roll with it on the fly.
Yeah, this happens. We're actually
Um,
getting down to the wire here. I
the
know
wire.
some people want to leave, but yeah, let's just finish up by showing how you get these some of these shapes back into After Effects one more time.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so the way we get this into After Effects is we go ahead and we select those lip shapes. We go ahead and we go to Export Shape Data. We copy all visible layers. And for the lips here, we're just going to do that same sort of thing where we do a layer, we do a new solid, we pick a color. Okay, and this is how you can auto color your shots. And you can do this on an effect layer as well, but I just like to use color layers and do soft shapes on them. You go to Edit, Paste Mocha Mask. Okay, and here what we will do is obviously we don't want to leave it like that because that's like looks like a clown, you know. So what we do is we come in here and we soften this again like a 2-pixel soften, or actually I'm actually not going to soften it that way. I'm going to soften it with an overall blur. I'm going to go to Effect, Blur, and we're going to do a box blur. The reason we're doing that is because if I used feathering, I would actually feather the middle shapes here, and I want to keep them solid. And we're just going to come down here, and we're going to put this at about 20%, and we are going to go ahead and we're going to do an overlay with this to sort of color her lips. So what we end up with is a very natural and soft color, and we end up like bringing detail out. Now, again, you don't want to do huge huge blends, okay? You want to do minor blends because the more huge blends you do, the more cartoonish it looks, okay? All right, so that's about it. We can talk about doing other shapes, but I would rather answer questions.
Yeah, I think in fact I think we're actually out of time. I know we've actually gone about 7 minutes over time. Mary, if you don't mind,
Oh, wow.
why don't you bring up the Imagineer website for a second, and I'll just wrap this up here. But I really thank everyone for hanging in there, and the feedback that I got online was people are saying, keep going, you know, let Mary finish the shot, even if though the time has run out. So I do think that people really appreciate seeing a full project from start to finish. And just to recap, you know, this is a webinar from Imagineer Systems. You know, Mary was showing you Mocha AE and Mocha Pro. We are going to be giving away one free seat of Mocha Pro as a door prize for those who attended. We're going to be picking one name out of a hat, basically, and that person will be notified via email. A couple things I just want to point out about our website. There is often questions about what's the difference between what's bundled with After Effects and Mocha AE that we sell and Mocha Pro. So on the compare products chart that Mary is going to bring up there, you could sort of see that Mocha AE CC, this is the product that is bundled with After Effects. It's actually you launch it from within After Effects. Okay, you can't launch it on its own anymore like it used to be with CS5. You can only launch it from within After Effects. If you'd like to upgrade to some more features but don't have the budget, you could upgrade to Mocha AE V3. This adds a lens tool, which is a very powerful tool for lens distortion, as well as the new 3D camera solver for After Effects. And
Can I
then,
add something to that?
yes, please.
The lens tool actually makes it to where you can track shots that are otherwise impossible to track accurately. So, because you can track through the curve of a shot. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, the lens tool is a really nice module, especially you're dealing with footage that was shot on GoPro or, you know, extreme fisheye lens kind of things. It's a very useful module. And then we actually make a free lens plugin that will allow you to copy that data from Mocha AE into After Effects, and that will work with any of the After Effects versions. So that lens plugin, the free lens plugin, just to get the data back in, will support CS4, CS5, CS6, etc. And then Mocha Pro, all the way on the left, has lots of advanced features and some of the things that Mary showed, including the remove module and the insert module. And any of our versions are available for a free 15-day trial. Just go to download and you can find those products. And Mary, if you don't mind just showing the video section, you can also find lots and lots of free tutorials, and you'll also find the most recent webinars as well. So this webinar will be archived in the video section, as Mary's showing you there. You can also browse by subject. So we try to tag our videos, our tutorials with certain subjects so that you can find the information that you're looking for. So again, thank you so much for attending. This is going to be the conclusion of this webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to email us by using this contact under support or sales, or you can also email us at sales@imagineyoursystems.com. So, Mary, thank you so much for your time. It was an amazing webinar.
Oh, thanks very much. And if you guys have any more questions, please feel free to either email us or address us on our user forums as well. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you, everyone.